And we're live! Yay! Oh, goodness. I am so thrilled to be here with this incredible human being that we have in front of us. So for those who are watching us live in the Facebook group, definitely this is a conversation, right? So comment, ask questions that come up, share what things spark a new insight or something new for you. Definitely, we want this to be interactive. And for those watching the replay, go with the team replay hashtag and let us know again how you're experiencing this and questions and what sparks for you. I am so honored and thrilled to have Debby Kittredge Irving in front of me. I'm like so excited I'm even tongue-tied. I told you this a year and a half ago, or it was May of 2016, April or May of 2016, that I think I emailed you and just said, wow, your book changed my life. Thank you for offering another perspective and for sharing your truth and opening a door for me to share my truth in a new way about my racial identity journey. And after that, I sent you an alarm clock because it woke up something in me. Oh, look, there it is on the wall. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yeah, and you know, you are not only an incredible teacher. There's so many layers of commonalities that we have. I worked in education 11 years. You've worked in education for so many years. You speak now all over the world, right? Around doing
U.S.
The U.S. right now? Okay, well, maybe I'm projecting in the future because I know that you are very sought after and you're an acclaimed author that is seen as the expert around, you know, white identity development, what it means to have courageous conversations about race, specifically through the lens of talking about whiteness. And so thank you for taking the time. Time is the most precious resource, and I am so grateful that you chose to be here. So welcome, Debby.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And also, just to contextualize some of that, so I really don't identify as an expert because no matter how much I learn, I am constantly having pointed out to me and recognizing within myself my own limitations, and what I don't know is infinite, and what I do know is a little bit more than yesterday. And I'm not, that is not lip service. I just live in a constant sense of, like, how am I ever going to catch up? How am I ever going to make up for a lifetime of misinformation?
Right.
And really get real about what this world is and this social arrangement I've been born into.
Yeah.
And also, I am much more visible than a lot of people, but there are professors and activists and people who are white doing this work all over the country. Who have all kinds of, expertise about white identity, and I'm the one who gets the attention. So all of that makes me a little uncomfortable.
Okay.
So I have trouble embracing that as a like career identity, because I just feel like I'm fumbling and learning every day.
Thank you for naming that. You know, I read off of what's on website. Like, your website is unique, but I read what's underneath in the Amazon category, and there's so much there. That's what I put in your in the bio of the event, and I think it is. I appreciate that. I mean, you have such humility and such transparency about your journey, and that is why I appreciate you so much. So thank you for lifting that up. You know, I read these things, and then I should be more conscious about what that might stir up for people, because you're right. There is this is such a the mindset that we have in this group is having a beginner's mind is critical, like always approaching things with a new mindset and open eyes around what am I not seeing? What do I need to unlearn? How have I perhaps kind of unintentionally embodied a part of my identity that I'm not, wanting to claim? So thank you for naming that. I appreciate that very much.
It takes so much intention, doesn't it?
It does. And that's the topic of today. You know, what I do is I facilitate programs and do coaching around intentional leadership and courageous leadership and inclusive leadership. And so you are such an incredible gift to have here, because we're in a particular time in our country where, 2 years ago, we maybe wouldn't be bumping up against this same topic in the same way, right? A lot of people have been triggered, stirred up, enraged, outraged by what's going on in politics these days. And what I find is it takes a lot of courage to take a stand and to stay at the table, right? And to say, I stand against this and here's why. And I'm not just going to post it and then walk away. Like, I'm actually going to firmly ground myself in this courageous leadership stance. And so you embody that in so many ways. You're consistent, you're active, your presence is consistently pushing people to see the world in through lenses that are truth, right? That are not whitewashing the history of our country. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, the first question is, what's your definition of courageous leadership, given what's going on in the world these days? And how has that definition kind of been formed over the course of your life?
So, courageous leadership will look different for different people in different contexts. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not working with a group of people within the confines of an organization. It might look different in that kind of a setting. I'm not in politics. So what I have is not unique to everybody, but it's an interesting role in that I'm really not beholden to anybody. I don't have a university who can tell me to pipe down. You're aggravating our alums. You're aggravating students here. Mm-hmm. So for me, there's a lot that goes into finding my way. So it's all on me mm-hmm. to find my path. And the courage that is required there is, how do I show up in ways, engage online in ways, engage in when I'm presenting to a community or engaging with a community in ways? How do I engage with people who are hiring me? Because people want all the time for me to come for free. Mm-hmm. How do I offer pro bono and discounted services and stay afloat? Like, constantly navigating all of that mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. from the quote unquote business end of it, the operation end of it, to the content delivery. And there's just so much that I have to fall back on in terms of what are my values, what's my integrity, mm-hmm. while being open to hearing other people's feedback. Mm-hmm. And being in this constant growth place. Mm. So one of the things that's really, I think the courage part is to neither dismiss people out of hand, mm-hmm. nor take what everybody else says as the be all and end all. Mm. So the courage for me means sitting with the discomfort of opening up my own boundaries long enough to consider, suspending my own reality long enough to take in other people's realities. And in the end, choosing something that feels aligned with my, both my above the neck goals and my below the neck kind of embodiment of spirit and soul and emotion. And that's a kind of courage that I've never been asked for in my life. I think maybe it's a similar courage that people might feel in a marriage mm-hmm. or partnership or with a child. If you're a parent, you're raising a child, there are ways that we have to really look at ourselves and take in someone's perspective. Yeah. And yet we can't lose ourselves in that process.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So staying in that really complicated place of personal growth and community growth mm-hmm. for me is the hardest piece. Mm-hmm. And whatever's the hardest requires the most courage.
Yes. It's actually that simple, like really leaning into what feels the most difficult and then saying, all right, even though I know it's right to lean into that. So much that you just shared resonates with what we've been doing this week. So this has been a 5-day challenge week where folks in this community have put themselves out there and shown courageous leadership by sharing their stories. So Monday we started with sharing their why. So that was kind of the first comment that you made, was just knowing my why. Why do I do what I do? And then second, you said staying integrity with my values, which was the second day that we did, which was like, what are your core values? What do you stand for and stand against? And how can that be your filter? The third day was identifying where you're trying to go, so your why, your how, basically how you want to show up. but then what, in service of what? Like, what's your vision? Who do you want to impact? What are your kind of end goals for what kind of legacy you want to leave? And now today is all about how do we all have blind spots. So how do we interrupt some of those patterns and lean into what's most uncomfortable? And how do we choose courage over comfort, especially when it's hard? And so I'm curious if you have a story or a moment in your life where you actually were bumping up against that discomfort and you chose courage, even though the discomfort was really tempting and seemed much easier. And if you'd be open to share the impact that experience had on you, I think we could all benefit from hearing your experience.
I think I probably experience that phenomenon really every single day, just because the nature of being out, in public, saying the kinds of things I'm saying. I get that. But there is one story I think that stands out, and it's the one I write about in my book, where the book hadn't come out yet. I went to a conference. I went to the People of Color Conference, which is a conference for people of color who work in independent schools. Mm-hmm. And some white people, more and more white people show up, unfortunately, but it's really designed to be a place for people of color in that universe to come and, collect their breath and get a kind of sense of reality and fuel one another, mm-hmm. and give some feedback to their institutions. Mm-hmm. So I was encouraged to go there primarily so I could experience what it feels like to be a racial minority. Mm-hmm. And also to see how people of color engage when white people are not dominating the space. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the very first day I was there, and then my book hadn't come out. I'm 2 years into my research. It was a 4 years total research. End up in a workshop, and I stand. Maybe there are 150 people in the workshop. Maybe 8 of us are white. Okay. And as soon as the presentation is over, I stand up and raise my hand to offer an idea. And I had no idea yet how inappropriate that was. Mm-hmm. This was a place for people of color to be doing their space, and lucky me to be there. And I really should have just kept my mouth shut and bet a fly on the wall and observed my own discomfort inside. But all this entitlement that's just wired into me. Like, if I have something to say, of course I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. Stand up, or maybe make a little joke, kind of have this kind of attitude. And mm-hmm. that's what I did. And I got some really harsh feedback very quickly in sequence. One Black woman, another Black woman, and a third Black woman. And, I'm sure I represented to them every white woman who's ever, interrupted them, taken a job, hurt their child as a teacher, whatever. Stood for so much. And they just exploded in a rage towards me. And I was able to talk to some other people afterwards and get a sense of kind of what had happened. So it was an amazing learning for me, once again, at the expense of people of color. But I remember going back to my hotel room and thinking, this is the first day of the conference. I just want to get on an airplane and go home. And I think I made a really big mistake to write this book, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And this is horrible. Like, mm-hmm. I can't believe what an ass I made of myself. And how can I stay here and walk through the conference for the next 3 or 4 days? I'm white. Everyone's going to see me. And now I have this reputation as that, like, obnoxious, unwoke white girl. And I really, really was tempted to get on a plane and go home and throw in the towel. Mm. And I couldn't help but imagine my family at the door, like, welcoming me home, and like, the people I knew saw me for how I wanted to be seen. But the truth is, what I was getting back at me in that space was true too. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really was showing up in an obnoxious way. Mm-hmm. I really was showing up, and I'm not sure another white person would have noticed that, but any person of color would have noticed that. Right. And part of what kept me going was I did not want to be that person who started a book and didn't finish it, and started a project and didn't finish it. Mm. And there were, at that 2 years in, there were people of color who had shared with me painful stories with the understanding that it would provide education for white people. And I felt like, wow, how easy it would be to just say, nope, not finishing my project and go back to being a classroom teacher. And then the other thing I realized was, this is probably how people of color experience the world all the time. You feel like you stand out, you feel misunderstood, you feel misjudged, you feel challenged, marginalized, and discriminated against. I mean, much, much worse than I experienced. And there's no choice but to go back into the office, to the classroom every day.
Right.
So you better get over yourself, Debbie, and get back in there. And it doesn't mean it wasn't really hard. But what I've noticed with each one of, and that's sort of an extreme version, but with each moment like this, I'm more familiar with the pattern of fear, doing the courageous thing, and moving through it and growing. Right.
Yeah, exactly. There's something about the awakening process, which is what you kind of allude to in all of the book, which I highly recommend, Waking Up White, for those who are curious to learn more, is the journey. It is actually a journey, and it's like uncovering, unlayering, whether it's like a ball of yarn or a big onion where you're peeling away a layer and you're like, oh my gosh, I have another blind spot, another layer. And, my hunch is that with the clock that I did, it's all about kind of awareness and then acknowledging it, saying it out loud, leaning into that discomfort, and then having to be vulnerable and to say, I don't know, or you know what, I messed up, or say more. Sometimes it's so hard if you don't have the answer. We get into this pattern of feeling like I have to know everything, or I feel triggered, and so I'm going to get defensive. But if we just pause, and check in with ourselves and think about what is coming up for me, and how do I want this person to experience me, so much is possible in that moment, and I wonder, as you describe the awakening process and your journey, kind of waking up to the various layers and having to really think about, what are the behaviors that I need to change? How am I going to show up? What is important for me to pay attention to? What is your process like? I know this community is really thinking about, how do I shift habits or set kind of intentions around showing up in conscious and courageous ways?
Well, it's interesting because there are different, I have colleagues who are really close friends. And so in that context, it's really about building trust. And in those instances, people now know, like Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. is a good example. He's the Black guy, founded the White Privilege Conference years ago. He will name whiteness when he sees it in me like that, and we'll laugh about it, or I'll name it and I'll say it to him. And then there are gender things that I point out in him. So it isn't always a one-way street, but it feels to me like in my closest relationships with colleagues, and some of even my white friends who are waking up with me, white friends and family, where we can say to each other, oh my God, did you see what I just did? Did you notice that? Did you see me just totally interrupt that person?
Right.
And so there it just becomes an open, we're all kind of open experiments in how the system and the culture has programmed us to kind of almost uphold our roles, play out our social roles.
Right.
And what's very different is being a facilitator or a presenter or a keynote speaker in the front of the room. That's a very different relationship. And in that moment, I'm always trying to stay, again, authentic. If I, something simple like, hold on, I just lost my thought for a minute. I'm very comfortable doing that. And I'm surprised that even something as simple as that, people are like, wow, like that didn't even faze you. Isn't that incredible? I mean, that's the level of inauthenticity. That, to me, that speaks to the level of inauthenticity that we've come to expect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, and And I continue to tell my story. I mean, I really operate from a place of testimony, both, now it's a 10-year-old journey. But I go back, of course, because the way I learned to be white was being socialized in the norms of whiteness. So I use my own testimony. And in doing that, that's being open and authentic and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And always, like I say, always open to feedback.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. And that, I think a lot of people say that, but to really follow up on it and to say, I really value, I need to hear how you experienced me. I'm not just saying, give me feedback open-endedly. I'm saying, hey, at the end of this talk or this workshop, I'm going to give you a piece of paper. Please write down anonymously what your experience was of this afternoon. It's the only way that I can check my blind spots on a consistent basis, to always, no matter what, even if it's like an index card or just a blank piece of paper, when I really have it together, it's got a nice, colorful, fancy reflection title or whatever. But it's so critical, because those three things that you just described, for those who are watching the replay, I just want to reiterate what she said. The power of relationships, especially across difference. Being in relationship, being proximate to someone of a different racial background, gender background, and being in like good rapport, enough rapport to where we trust each other, and the assumption is that we're learners and we're going to hold up the mirror for each other. That has been paramount for my development. And I thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of us are looking for this big strategy, but literally it's like, just deepen the one relationship that you have, and make some commitments to each other, And then the second thing that you said about being vulnerable and authentic, like really admitting when you don't have the answers, and being real when you lose your train of thought, or you fumble, it's all right. Right. In fact, that helps humanize conversations and normalize that we're going to fumble in these exact conversations, And then finally, the power of asking for like specific feedback. I just can't emphasize enough. So thank you for bringing up those 3 points.
And yet, Rachel, so here's interesting. So I hear you say, you really value feedback. I really value feedback.
Yeah.
That for me does not mean it always feels good.
No.
Like I love the ones that say, this presentation was amazing. Mm-hmm. Debbie, your book changed my life. And yet it's often the ones that point out something that feels really hard to take in that grow me.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not at the place where I'm like, oh, thank you so much for pointing out my ignorance. I mean, it always, or my blind spot, or a way that I negatively impacted you. It doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. Valuing it does not mean it feels good.
Right.
And that's where courage comes in.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. The things that keep us up at night, the things that have us stirring, those are usually the things that we need to pay attention to, like definitely negativity bias. I could geek out on brain science all day, but we have to, when we hear one negative thing, we have to hear something like 17 positive for every one negative. And so our brain goes on to that negative thing. And it's like, they said that whatever. And then we hold on to that. And when we go to a place of self-judgment, self-doubt, or we judge them like, well, that's their fault. Those things can be really problematic, because it actually takes courage to lean in with curiosity and to say, that person clearly had this experience. What does that mean for me? What meaning do I make of that? And how can I use that to make some meaning in myself, and make some shifts if I need to.
So I heard a word used as a verb recently. You've probably heard this. Let's complicate this.
What is it?
Can we complicate this?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I love it, because so it goes like this. So you're exactly right. The things that keep us up at night, often what I will do is either, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I said that. Oh my gosh, I feel sick to my stomach. Or, what an ass. I can't believe he said that to me. And how dare him think that about me? And that's not true. And so that's really black and white, either or thinking. Right. All my fault, all your fault. So let's complicate that.
Uh-huh.
how it's used. Let's complicate that. Now, what if there's some truth? And if that was a really harsh delivery, like there could have been a more productive way for that person to get that idea across to me. And yeah, so, we're both flawed. We're both flawed, but can we hold the complexity of two flawed people, because everybody is flawed, two flawed people trying to communicate across something that was painful. It was painful in the first place, and trying to give the feedback is painful. So how do we stay in that complicated, uncomfortable place and get the gem that's in there somewhere without going, screw you or screw me?
Right. And that right there is courageous leadership, to stay at the table and to say, let me figure out what I can learn about this so I can be my best self and have maximal impact. Because when we write people off, we're writing off a part of ourselves, I believe. Like there's something there's a reason why things trigger us so deeply. And I think those are the things that I'm always going to be working to uncover and unlearn and get better and kind of refine my own reflection practice, because I don't think you ever arrive to the destination. It's always going to be a journey, right?
And I think, so the whole idea is that, I think the things that keep me up at night, it's always about a person. It's always about a relationship, maybe even a non-relationship, maybe one comment someone said. So I think it's really important for each of us to know our triggers. So for me, a sense of being misunderstood or having a connection broken, those are personal triggers for me. And so it's important for me to be able to say to myself, what's happening right now, part of what's happening is I feel misunderstood, or part of what's happening is I feel a disconnection. And to be able to do some self-soothing about that. And, as a white person, again, I have to say, like, wow, what a luxury to be able to act on some of the, when I feel hurt, I can withdraw. I think of all the times through history that marginalized, discriminated groups of people still have to go to work and put on a happy face, still have to show up and, act like nothing's wrong. And so, as I hear myself saying what is real and true, this is that integrity piece. I know it's real and true for me to be on this journey where I am not hiding parts of myself, leaning into challenges. And I also know that in many ways I'm fragile. And I'm learning some of these things at age 50, almost 58, because I didn't learn them earlier because I didn't have to. So all of that's true at once.
That's right. I always say two things can be true at the same time. We can feel strongly about something and fragile. We can feel pain and persevere. We can have expertise and still be a learner. And that is what makes us, as folks committed to this work, it makes me stay in the game. Like I have to know that there's hope and I can still feel deep pain. I have to know I have to take care of my body. Like people often ask about body balance when you're so active in conversations and it's painful all the time. How do you stay grounded in these practices that you describe around self-soothing? Because we need all of us to be healthy to stay in the game, right? And I'm not in the like oppression Olympics conversation when people start saying, well, you don't have it as bad as, or this is this person, or you need to work harder. We all have to trust our intuition, I believe, deeply, that we know when they're
this way, not that way. That's one that really bothers me.
All the shoulds of the world. But I just thank you for blazing a trail, really, Debbie, and for, just being your true self and sharing your story and being a learner in public. It takes so much courage to do what you do, and you have opened doors. For me, especially, I'll always be grateful to you because my partner and I told you this, but Leah and I listened to your book on audio as we drove across the country, and it changed our life. Like it really, having the discussion questions at the end of each chapter, we would pause it and have a conversation about what you asked us to think about. We would engage and think about how can we bring this back to the schools that we work in, or the folks who have said, I want to start my own awakening journey. So I can't thank you enough. There's so many big and small ways that your book is having a ripple effect in the world. And I'm so grateful to be a part of one small ripple that's happened because of it.
Well, thank you. As you know, my work is built on the work of hundreds and thousands of other people, and I can't wait to see what this next generation will come up with out of all the books that are and resources that are coming out right now.
Yeah.
So handing the torch to you. Maybe you'll hand it back to me one day.
Yeah, we'll start the relay right now. I'll run a 400. You can run a 400 next. Right on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Debbie. Are there any final words or just anything that you feel called to share with people who are on their journey and have heard this conversation as they're now grappling with their own definition of courageous leadership and what it means for them?
Well, there's one person I would put on your radar if she isn't already, because it sounds like a lot of the people who are following you are activists and are wondering about how do I be courageous? How do I stay in the game? Because burnout, fear and burnout will, I think, prevent a lot of people who have really big hearts and a lot to offer the world from getting engaged. Right. So there's a woman named Dr. Kathy Obear.
Okay.
And she has a new book called Staying in It for the Long Haul, which is about preventing burnout. And one of the things there's so much wisdom in this book, but one of the things I like about her book is she says, if we're all trying to be all things to all people, we're not be very good at what we do, and we're going to be exhausted and resentful. So if we can really hone in on, and she doesn't use this language, I don't think, but I heard you use it. If we hone in on our why and we really understand our role in community, in movement, and we stick to that, it's what usually, if we really are sticking to it, it's what fuels us anyway. It's our passion. And so not only does it up the chances that we won't burn out, but it creates a much more intelligent and nimble movement because now we're a movement of fine-tuned specialists.
Yeah, I just put that in their book called Staying in It for the Long Haul. Check out that book. I thank you for that recommendation. I know I will definitely check it out. That sounds fantastic. Yeah.
I read it and I just, wow. Because I really, I do. I'm sometimes I feel a week away from crawling under the covers and never coming out again.
There's a lot of resistance out there. Someone just told me every time rejection comes to you, see it as protection. So rejection is protection because whatever energy that was going to bring to me was going to cause negativity on a superficial level or what have you. So the rejection is protection for something larger. And I just feel called to, because I think we can really beat ourselves up if not everybody is whatever the case may be, or if people, back to your triggers, which I think a lot of people are going to relate to, being misunderstood or having a connection broken. Okay, well, let's think about what is the universe protecting me from in this moment, because I'm maybe meant to be having a little veer off course right now for whatever reason. Yeah. Right on.
So, these are really tough times. And for all of us who are feeling the pinch, there's a reason. And we've got to stay strong and stay in it and stay together.
That's right. We need each other. That is why I'm so grateful for you. So thank you again. And I'll put your website below. Is there anything else you want to share with people? I know the website feels like what I got, but I just wanted to double check to make sure. Does that sound good?
No, there's something called the 21-day plan in there under the resources tab. And that's something people who are trying maybe to get family, coworkers, a church group, a group of activists on to do something together. It's a great plan. You can read all about it there. It's you do one thing for 21 days in a row to get yourself kind of to a new level or in a new direction.
There we go. Love it. Love it. Yeah, I'll make sure to put the links down below. Thank you again. So grateful for you in the world and for your time and for your presence in my life. It's just so cool to see the clock back there and to know that we're still connected and I'm cheering you on every step of the way.
Yeah, same here, Rachel. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
You too.